In the past two classes, we had started off with the chapter Rise of Nationalism in Europe, right? And to begin with, we had started off what is actually the word nationalism means. Nationalism का मतलब होता बेटा when you are arousing the feeling of patriotism, when you are able to attach yourself to the soil. And in Europe, the main problem was in the earlier years, that's we have been studying about 1800s, though people lived in one single part, but they had different languages, sub-languages, culture, and they were not relating themselves to the same soil. जैसे कि फ्रांस में जो लोग रहते थे उन्हें नहीं पता था they are French. तो फ्रेंच फ्रांस में ही स्टार्ट हुआ था. The actual जो nationalism है that started in France, and later on it slowly spread to other parts of Europe. Then we studied that what were the elements they had taken to unify themselves as a single nation, like a single currency, flag, the feelings of la patrie, some measurement. Then हमने पढ़ा था कि when last year हम लोग 9th में जहाँ छोड़ा था French Revolution, वहाँ we had left that it was Napoleon Bonaparte who had invaded, or you can say took control of France, but due to his repressive measures, he was defeated. France, Prussia, Germany, Austria, ये जो तीनों forces थे इन्होंने उसको हरा दिया था, and ultimately France जो है once again it was without any government, and that is where we start off 1815. The Battle of Waterloo, 1815, the Treaty of Vienna, जो कि ऑस्ट्रियन जो डच ड्यूक थे उन्होंने किया था, मेटरनिच ने. एंड देन देयर वर सम चेंजेस मेड. फ्रांस के जो बॉर्डर्स थे उनको सील किया गया. देयर वर न्यू चेंजेस लाइक पोलैंड का एक हिस्सा रशिया को चला गया. इटाली का जो एक हिस्सा था दैट वाज रूल्ड बाय द ऑस्ट्रियंस, एंड इस तरीके से दे हैड सेटल्ड. नाउ आफ्टर दैट there were revolutions, protests everywhere. फिर हमने पढ़ा ग्रीक का, and 1832 Greek was recognized as the treaty of Constantinople. Then हमने पढ़ा Germany, which had a long journey 1848 से 1871. Like France, there also they had the German National Assembly. But that उनका जो proposal था that was not accepted, and later on Otto von Bismarck, who is also called as the architect of Germany, had very tactfully, उन्होंने French के साथ जो है he had tactfully made the arrangements, and after fighting 3 wars over a period of 7 years, Germany was unified on 18 January 1871 in the Hall of Versailles, and जो प्रूशिया के राजा थे, king, he was offered the throne. And all the measures which were there in Prussia, उसको Germany ने adopt किया. Then next we came that we also read about the Silesian weavers revolt, and then we read about Italy. Italy had a fragmented political outgo. What happened is, वहाँ पर even though the people were all Italians, but it was divided into 7 different states. The upper provinces था that was ruled by the Austrians, Then two Sicilies and नीचे वाला जो था, that was ruled by the Spanish Bourbon dynasty. बीच वाला जो था, that was ruled by the Pope. So the people did not know actually to which, मतलब अगर आप एक पर्टिकुलर एरिया में हो तो यू आर अंडर द स्पेनिश रूलर, दूसरे में हो तो पोप रूलर. एंड इट वाज द वहां के जो चीफ मिनिस्टर थे कैवॉर, he had taken up this pain. उन्होंने with the help of French diplomacy उन्होंने वहां से आर्मी उठाया, and then he marched into Spain. सबसे पहले ऑस्ट्रिया जो थे उनको भगाया. Then he also had the interaction with Giuseppe Garibaldi. Giuseppe Garibaldi was a revolutionist. He was also the follower of Giuseppe Mazzini. And he had volunteered, और उनके साथ में कई peasants ने जो है volunteer किया था, and they marched into the two cities of Sicily, and from there the Spanish ruler was also chased away, and thus it became one. लेकिन and जो Victor Emmanuel थे, he was made as the president, the leader of that particular country. But due to excessive illiteracy, the people, when they used to speak up, the raise the slogans La Talia, they did not even know कि La Talia जो था, that was a slogan. They thought it is the wife of Emmanuel. Yet it could be unified. So this was what we had done till now. Today we will be reading two parts. One is what is the strange case of Britain, and last but not the least is what happened that triggered the World War I. Britain, as we see today, अगर आप लोग आज मतलब कि ब्रिटेन जाते हो या you have your friends or relatives there, so you will see that Britain is a patchwork of Scotland on the north side, England, and then you have Welsh, and also on the map if you see slightly थोड़ा सा आगे जाकर एक छोटा सा आइलैंड नेशन है which is called as Ireland. आयरलैंड के बारे में शायद आप पॉलिटिकल साइंस में भी पढ़ो. आयरलैंड में क्या है? आयरलैंड इज अ सेपरेट कंट्री, एक्चुअली इट इज अ सेपरेट आइलैंड. वहां क्या था? देयर आर टू काइंड्स ऑफ पीपल, टू काइंड्स ऑफ मतलब रिलीजियस सबसेक्ट, क्रिश्चियंस, बट रोमन कैथोलिक क्रिश्चियंस एंड प्रोटेस्टेंट्स. जो कैथोलिक्स हैं दे आर सेड टू बी बिट, थोड़ा सा वो लोग जो है ऑर्थोडॉक्स होते हैं, द ओल्ड बाइबल. whereas जो प्रोटेस्टेंट्स से दे बिलीव्ड इन द न्यू बाइबल, द न्यू टेस्टामेंट्स. The Protestants were rich and they also wanted Ireland to be part of England because England is very rich country. Whereas जो Catholics say they wanted Ireland to be a separate republic. लेकिन Britain, because it is rich, powerful, so with a diplomatic, tactful association, even though वहां दो बार लड़ाई भी हुई, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी इंग्लैंड हैड ओवरटेकन आयरलैंड. एंड स्कॉटलैंड जो कि उनके ऊपर ही है, विच इज अ ब्यूटिफुल लैंडस्केप. अभी भी वहां पर जो अगर आप लोग जाते हो वहां पर तो यू विल सी स्कॉटलैंड इज वेरी ब्यूटिफुल. बट येट द ब्रिटेन जो यूके था, उसने जो इंग्लैंड था, it imposed the control on Scotland, and forcefully Scotland जो है that was incorporated into Britain. And UK, that is the United Kingdom of Britain जो है that consists of Welsh, Ireland and Scotland. So why it is called as strange cases? In other areas the nationalism जो है वो जागा था. They wanted to make themselves as a nation. यहाँ पर क्या था? The nation already existed, but it went into a union with the Britain just because Britain was rich and powerful. That is why it is called as strange case of Britain. The model nation of the model of the nation or nation state, some scholars have argued, is Great Britain. क्यों? In Britain, the formation of the nation state was not the result of a sudden upheaval or revolution. It was the result of a long drawn process. As I said, it was not like a revolution जैसा दूसरे जहाँ पे हुआ था. There was no British nation prior to 18th century. The primary identities of the people who inhabited the British Isles were English, that is the people who belong to England, Welsh, Scot or Irish. Scot आपके Scotland, Ireland आपका Irish. All the ethnic groups had their own cultural and political traditions. But as the English nation steadily grew in wealth, importance and power, it was able to extend its influence over the other nations of the islands. मतलब ये सब अलग थे और अपना इनका कल्चर था. The English Parliament, which had seized the power from the monarchy in 1688 at the end of protracted conflict, was the instrument through which a nation state with England at its center came to forged. मतलब इंग्लैंड की जो पैदाइश है, that was in 1688. But the English Parliament was rich and powerful. So with the Act of, ये पेपर में आता है, the Act of Union 1707. Act of Union 1707 between England and Scotland that resulted in the formation of United Kingdom of Great Britain meant in effect that England was able to impose its influence on Scotland. The British Parliament was henceforth dominated by English members. The growth of British identity meant Scotland's distinctive culture and political institutions were systematically suppressed. The Catholic clans, जो Scotland Highlands में रहते थे, because that's a more like a mountainous, that suffered terrible repression. वहाँ पर उनको जो है बहुत दबा के रखा जाता था. अभी भी I don't know, but it is said my cousin is living here in Scotland only. It's very beautiful, very, very, very beautiful. But he says that the England का जो power अपने England उसमें है, that is not there in Scotland. The Scottish Highlanders मतलब the people who belong to the Highland. The most of them are the आपका जो है landscapes है, mountains है वहाँ पर, were forbidden to speak their Gaelic language or wear their national dress, and large number were forcibly driven out of their homeland. उनको अपने मर्जी के कपड़े जो उनके अपने कल्चर थे या फिर उनकी अपनी जो लैंग्वेज थी वो नहीं बोलने देते थे, and they tried to suppress Scotland. आयरलैंड का मैंने आपको ऑलरेडी कहानी सुनाया. This is actually there in the political science also. Ireland suffered a similar fate. It was a country deeply divided between Catholics and Protestants. The Protestants were modern, rich, therefore they wanted the English to help them, whereas the Roman Catholics were the ethnic people, Purane. The English helped the Protestants of Ireland to establish their dominance over the largely Catholic country. Catholic's revolt against British dominance was suppressed. मतलब दो जने थे उसके एक था वॉफ टोन एंड हिज यूनाइटेड आयरिश मैन, उन्होंने कोशिश की थी बट इट वॉज अ फेलियर एंड अल्टीमेटली आयरलैंड आपका इंग्लैंड का पार्ट बन गया 1801। यानी कि जो आज हम लोग कहते हैं ब्रिटेन, तो दैट कंसिस्ट ऑफ इंग्लैंड, वेल्स, स्कॉटलैंड, आयरलैंड, लेकिन ये सब पहले अलग थे बट लेटर ऑन दे वर इनकॉर्पोरेटेड। और अब जो न्यू ब्रिटेन है उसका अपना एक फ्लैग है विच इज वेरी कॉमन, हम लोग मूवीज में भी देखते हैं, द ब्लू कलर उस पर डाल के यूनियन जैक हम बोलते हैं। Their national anthem is God Save Our Noble King, but अब इसका नाम है God Save Our Noble Queen, क्योंकि अभी जो क्वीन है एलिजाबेथ, शी इज द हेड। वहां पर दे हैव अ पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम, बट दो हेड मतलब कि जो क्वीन है शी इज द हेड ऑफ द स्टेट। जैसे हमारे यहाँ प्रेसिडेंट इज कॉल्ड एज द हेड ऑफ द स्टेट, वहां पर द क्वीन इज द हेड ऑफ द स्टेट। द इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज इज द prominent one, और जो पुराने हैं the older nation survived only as subordinate partners. So this is how England came into existence. Now one important one, what were the symbols that were used? Sometimes you may be given the symbols and you may be asked to write its meaning. In the MCQs, you may be given the choices and you may be asked to tell the answer. So they had, जैसे हमारे हिंदुस्तान वाला भी आप पढ़ोगे, even you will be reading about the India also. हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं? भारत माता. Now who says भारत is माता? भारत हम बोलते हैं, भारती नहीं बोलते हैं, लेकिन हम बोलते हैं माता. And you must have seen, or some of the girls might have even become the Bharat Mata in the schools during the functions and all. I have made both of my daughters at Bharat Mata with red, white, green and orange साड़ी, और वो फ्लैग डालकर उसके हाथ में एक वो फ्लैग रखा हुआ, एक क्राउन रखा हुआ. So these were very common. हमारे यहाँ पर भी है. और इसको no one knows whether Bharat is Mata or Pita, but we create that feeling. Why? Because a woman has more patience than men. I'm sorry, there are so many boys, but this is a reality. This is a reality. A woman has more power, more patience than men. She is the one who carries her child for 9 months in her womb. She is the one who undergoes all the pain. So that is why we had in our country, हमने भारत को माता का रूप दिया था, just representing her as patience. Similarly, हर कंट्री ने अपनी जो कंट्री है उसको एक एब्स्ट्रैक्ट आइडिया दिया था, और इसको हम बोलते हैं एब्स्ट्रैक्ट आइडिया. Even in Europe also they had given abstract ideas. जैसे हमारे यहाँ भारत माता है, the figure was drawn by Abhinandranath Tagore. It was first created by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee. Similarly, in Europe also, the allegories were presented. Now, what is the meaning of allegory? As I said, abstract idea. Abstract matlab which is not actually there, which you do not have as a solid. But ये हमारी सोच है. Artists in the 18th and 19th centuries found a way out by personifying a nation. As I told you, personification means something as if a person. जैसे हमारे यहाँ भारत माता. Nations were then portrayed as female figures. The female form that was chosen to personify did not stand for any particular woman. As I said, woman को इसलिए personify किया जाता because she is the epitome of patience. Rather, it sought to give the abstract idea of the nation a concrete form. और इसी को हम बोलते हैं allegory. Allegory is also, what you call as a figure of speech in English language. Allegory means relating, metaphor की तरह. In French Revolution, they used the female allegory to portray liberty, justice and republic. मतलब अलग अलग चीजों से हम अलग अलग जो है उसका एक मीनिंग निकालते हैं. These ideas were represented through specific object or symbols like red cap, broken chain, justice को blindfolded woman carrying a pair of weighing scales. हमारे यहाँ पर भी यही है. If you have seen the movies में भी अगर आपने देखा होगा कोर्ट में तो व्हाइट कलर की एक मतलब कि देवी खड़ी होती है और उनके आंखों में पट्टी होती है. And she is carrying the weighing scale. You know what is the meaning of that? Even though some people make fun कि कानून अंधा है, but that means कानून जो है, law जो है, it doesn't have eyes as a bias. मतलब कानून पार्शियलिटी नहीं करता. कानून अंधा नहीं है, कानून पार्शियलिटी नहीं करता है. मतलब कि वो आंख बंद करके इट इज हैविंग द वेइंग स्केल, उसके लिए उसके तराजू में एवरीवन इज इक्वल. Similar female allegories were invented by the artists in the 19th century to represent nation. ये आपका अलग अलग नेशन का अलग अलग है. In France, हमारे यहाँ भारत माता, in France she was Christian Marianne. Christian मतलब name. Christian का मतलब होता है उनको नेम किया गया Marianne, a popular Christian name which underlined the idea of people's nation. और उनका कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या था? लिबर्टी एंड द रिपब्लिक. रेड कप कैप, ट्राइकलर, द कॉकेट. Statues of Marianne were erected in the public squares to remind the people of the national symbol of unity and to persuade them to identify it. Marianne images were marked on coins and stamps to arouse that feeling. Similarly, in Germany, Germania became the allegory. ये देखो ये बना हुआ है. In a visual representation, Germania wears a crown of oak leaves, as German oak stands for heroism. अब इसमें जो oak leaves वो पहनती है उन सबका क्या meaning है? ये आपका पेपर में this question has come as directly as the match the column. ये पूरा का पूरा जो ये बॉक्स बना हुआ है, this has come as a match the column. Broken chains, the significance is, चेन का मतलब क्या है? आपको बांधा हुआ है. Broken chains मतलब freedom. Breastplate with eagle, ये बना हुआ है आपका जो यहाँ पे लगाया जाता है, that was for strength. Crown of oak leaves, oak green color, heroism. Sword, the readiness to fight. Olive branch around the sword, willingness to make peace. Black, red and gold tricolor. This was a flag in 1848. Later on it was banned by the Dukes of German states. Rays of the rising sun, beginning of a new era. ये जो बना हुआ है, ये पूरे ये जो ये बने हुए हैं, these are the symbols. So these symbols were used. ये देखिए, ये पेपर में आया था. If you see the some of the question papers or the sample papers will find this figure, the fallen Germania. 1848 जर्मनी के अंदर जो है the revolt started, the protest started 1848. तो ये जो fallen Germania है, this is signifying that what the historical events at that time Germany was fallen. It did not have any proper government. This figure has also come. Rhine जो है, it is a very famous place. Rhineland वहाँ का जो है सबसे famous place है. And ये जो Rhineland है, it is actually, you have a beautiful water area. ये वहाँ पर है. And this is one of the land which was even जब फ्रांस वो लड़ाई हुई थी, तो this particular area was captured. So, Germania guarding the Rhine. Rhine is one of the most important land. मतलब यहाँ पर इसका जो meaning है, significance, what is the significance of this picture? Rhineland एक बहुत important point है जो कि उनका natural resources है वहाँ पर, and that is the place which was even जब आपकी war हुआ था, तो this was a place जब आप हिटलर वाले chapter में आपने पढ़ा था, this was the area which was captured by France. तो Germania guarding the Rhine. This is the German sword protects the German Rhine. So this is how different countries in Europe had attained their nation state. आज हम जिस बार मतलब कि I'm repeatedly telling you, आज हम लोग जिस map को देखते हैं when we come across France, now definitely there are some added and some deleted areas also. Like पहले जो areas थे आपके Amsterdam अभी है, पहले नहीं था, तो वो अब है. Then I told you that Yugoslavia was there, it was disbanded to 6 different countries. चेकोस्लोवाकिया, पोलैंड अब एक अलग सा कंट्री है. इट इज नॉट नाउ पार्ट ऑफ रशिया. रशिया के अंदर भी बहुत सारे ऐसे एरियाज थे जो कि अब इंडिपेंडेंट आपके जो हैं, दे आर CIS कॉमनवेल्थ इंडिपेंडेंट स्टेट्स हैं. So now the map is something different, but this map took this much of year, then a World War I, then the World War II, and ultimately now we are living somewhat in peace. So now what was the reason which led to World War I? Okay, that was the main area. वहीं से आपका जो वर्ल्ड में आपस में जो झगड़ा था वो स्टार्ट हुआ. पहले एक दूसरे को कॉन्कर करते थे, बट आपस में लड़े नहीं थे. बट दिस वाज अ वन which had led to a disaster. And World War I खत्म हुआ. For some period there was peace once again when Hitler came into World War II हुआ, and World War II end हुआ आपका with the destruction of Japan when America had shelled out the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So these are the events which had actually turned the entire history of the world. By the last quarter of 19th century, nationalism no longer retained its idealistic, liberal, democratic sentiment of the first of the country, but became a narrow creed with limited ends. पहले तो उनका जो लड़ाई थी वो ये था, आइडियलिस्टिक लिबरल, वो लोग खुद अपने लिए लिबर्टी चाहते थे. All the country wanted democratic, but अब it was intolerant. It became more towards warlike situations, and moreover, जो ये वाला period था, that is after the World War, if you see, the process of imperialism, colonialism, वो आना शुरू हो गया. India was colonized by Europe only, that is Britain. South Africa was colonized. Then if you look into the extreme, Java was colonized. Then Sri Lanka was colonized. यानी कि ये वो पीरियड था जब people started colonizing. And also war. The major European powers in turn manipulated the nationalist aspirations of subject peoples in Europe to further their own imperialist aim. अपने आप को रिच बनाने के लिए वो लोगों को मैनिपुलेट करते. द मोस्ट सीरियस, यहीं से आपका पूरा जो है, दिस एंटायर पैराग्राफ इज द वन which tells what happened because which triggered First World War. The most serious source of nationalist tension in Europe after 1871 was the area of Balkans. The Balkans was a region of geographical and ethnic variation comprising modern-day Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, Greece, Macedonia, Croatia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Slovenia, Serbia, Montenegro. अभी भी हैं ये छोटे छोटे. एंड इनमें जो लोग रहते थे वहां पर दो तरीके के लोग थे. स्लैव्स, मतलब स्लैव्स जो थे, यूगोस्लेविया मैंने बताया था आपको, तो स्लैव्स थे आपके. बट दे यूज्ड टू फाइट विद ईच अदर. अ लार्ज पार्ट ऑफ Balkans was under the control of Ottoman Empire. We have already studied about it that in 1832 ग्रीस ने खुद को ऑटोमन एम्पायर से अलग किया था. The spread of the ideas of romantic nationalism in the Balkans together with the disintegration of the Ottoman made this region very explosive. All through the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had sought to strengthen itself through modernization and internal. वो अपनी जगह थे, जैसे कि they had formed the Muslim leagues around the world. One by one, जितने भी नाम ऊपर लिखे हैं, these European subject nationalists broke away from its control and declared independence. The Balkan peoples based their claims of independence or political rights based on their nationality and used history. कि वो पहले जो हैं, they had a separate history. Like Greece is called as the cradle of civilization. तो वो इसी चीज को अपना मुद्दा बनाकर वो अलग हुए. Hence, the rebellious nationalities in the Balkans thought of their struggles as attempt to win back their long-lost independence. As the different Slavic nationalities struggled to define their identity and independence, it became an area of intense conflict. एक तरफ वो लोग ऑटोमन से अलग हो रहे थे, अलग होना चाहते थे, दूसरी तरफ वो आपस में एक दूसरे से भी झगड़ते रहते थे. The Balkan states were fiercely jealous of each other and each hoped to gain more territory at the expense of others. Matters were further complicated because Balkans also became the scene of big power rivalry. बड़े बड़े जो थे, जैसे रशिया, जर्मनी, इंग्लैंड, ये सब जो है बाल्कन्स पे अपना कंट्रोल रखना चाहते थे. Over trade and colonies, over naval and military. These rivalries were very evident in the way Balkan problem unfolded. Russia, Germany, England, Austro-Hungary, all were keen on countering the hold of other powers over the Balkan and extending their control over this area. This led to a series of wars in the region and finally the First World War. क्योंकि वर्ल्ड दो हिस्सों में बट गया, which you had already studied in your 9th standard, the Axis and the Allied powers. Some supported the Allied, the others supported the Axis power, and ultimately ये जो Balkans का जो मतलब की problem था, that was the main problem which led to First World War. This map, it's a map also, you can say. This is also a beautiful पिक्चर ये दिखा रहा है कि उस वक्त में एट दैट पीरियड द मोस्ट रिच एंड पावरफुल वर ब्रिटानिया इज रिलेटेड टू ब्रिटिश नेशन। तो ये दिखा रहे हैं कि द ब्रिटिश वांटेड टू रूल द एंटायर वर्ल्ड। ये आपका जो ये वाला कलर दिख रहा है ना, ऑरेंज सा, दिस इज ब्रिटेन, और इसके पास यहाँ पर आपका आयरलैंड आता है। सो नाउ दे वांटेड द कंट्रोल ऑन ऑल द कंट्रीज। द कॉलोनीज आर रिप्रेजेंटेड थ्रू द इमेजेस ऑफ टाइगर, एलिफेंट, फॉरेस्ट, प्रिमिटिव पीपल, जैसे वो हमें या जावा के लोगों को प्रिमिटिव समझते थे, तो दे हैव बीन कि उन सब पर अपना राज करना चाहते थे। And Britain as the national pride. This is the interpretation of this map. Now, last but not the least, as the war ended, अब 1914, 1918 आपका वॉर था। वॉर के बाद और वॉर के दौरान या उससे थोड़े पहले क्या हुआ था, many countries, nationalism allied with imperialism, मतलब all the European countries wanted to have the colonial control on other countries. Like we all know, India was also colonized by the Europe only. Means England is part of Europe. It led to Europe disaster in 1914. That is the World War. But meanwhile, many countries in the world which had been colonized by the European powers in the 19th century began to oppose these domination. India, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka gained its independence in 1948, whereas we had got it in 47. The anti-imperial movements that developed everywhere were nationalist. In the sense, they all struggled to form independent nation states and were inspired by सेंस ऑफ कलेक्टिव नेशनल यूनिटी। हमारे जो नेशनलिज्म इन इंडिया वाला चैप्टर है ना, उसमें ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट कंसेप्ट है, कलेक्टिव नेशनल यूनिटी, forged in confrontation with imperialism. European ideas of nationalism were now nowhere replicated. For people everywhere developed their own specific variety of nationalism. मतलब हर लोगों ने अपने लिए नेशनलिज्म का एक नया डेफिनेशन रखा। पहले तो फ्रांस से जर्मनी से आपके उसका नाम क्या, इटाली, इन जगहों पे गया था। लेकिन बाद में आफ्टर 1914 these things did not spread because all the countries, specifically those who were imperialized, those who were colonized, उन्होंने अपना नेशनलिज्म का एक अपना डेफिनेशन रखा। But the idea or that society should be organized into nation states came to be accepted as natural and universal. आज इंडिया स्टार्टिंग में भी था, बट डेफिनेटली इंडिया के अंदर भी, if you read the political signs of India, you will find there were many states which were not part of India. आज हम कहते हैं कि आंध्रा इज पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया, आज हम कहते हैं गुजरात इज पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया, लेकिन अगर आप अगर आप स्टार्टिंग में इफ यू लुक इनटू द एक्चुअल, अगर आप देखोगे तो दे वर नॉट पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन यूनियन। इनमें से बहुत सारे ऐसे थे जो इंडियन यूनियन के हिस्से थे ही नहीं। लाइक जूनागढ़ वॉज अ पोर्शन, मतलब जूनागढ़ इज इन गुजरात, एंड जूनागढ़ जो है वहां पर द पीपल डिड नॉट वांट टू बिकम पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया। सिमिलरली कश्मीर, ये जो हम मूवीज देख रहे हैं ना, कश्मीर फाइल्स, दिस इज ओनली बिकॉज कश्मीर वाज नॉट पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया। कश्मीर वाज अ सेपरेट एरिया। निजाम इन हैदराबाद, अगेन दैट वाज आल्सो अ सेपरेट एरिया, लेकिन they all became part of India due to certain you can say diplomatic tactful agreements. But आज for us India means any person who is living in Kanyakumari or Kashmir, any person who is living in Arunachal Pradesh or in Gujarat. तो इसी तरीके से यूरोप के अंदर भी बाकी कंट्रीज के अंदर भी दे स्टार्टेड रियलाइजिंग कि जिस सॉइल में हम रहते हैं दैट इज आवर नेशन स्टेट, where we are all having a common history, common culture, where we are supposed to follow a common language, where we are supposed to have a common government, a single nation, single flag, single system of administration that came. आज हम लोग कह सकते हैं कि yes, India is one part, Pakistan one part, Bhutan one part. Then आपका जो है even in Europe also there are other separate countries. So this was a long journey which started in French Revolution, that is when Louis XVI became the monarch of France. वहां से जो start हुआ था, that were the ideas that spread out to different parts of Europe, and one by one, everyone started fighting for liberalism. Everyone started fighting for freedom, for being democratic. And then one by one, with the help of people like Giuseppe Mazzini, Giuseppe Garibaldi, then आपका Cavour, Bismarck, the nations came into existence. So that is the chapter, Rise of Nationalism in Europe. If you look into these questions, we have number of questions in this chapter, but of course, these are some of the questions which you should always remember. Boards के अंदर the first preference the board gives is to the NCERT text questions, and then to the questions which are extra. Write a short note on Giuseppe Mazzini, the person who had formed the secret society, Young Italy and Young Europe. Count Camillo de Cavour, the main architect behind unification of Italy, the Greek War of Independence, that is, Greece was part of Ottoman Empire. Through the poets, through the English poets, musicians, people had started spreading the ideas, like Lord Byron जो थे, the English poet ने पैसा भी दिया था. He had even fought, and ultimately in the Treaty of Constantinople, it was declared as independent. Frankfurt Parliament, आपका ये फ्रैंकफर्ट पार्लियामेंट में आपको वो जर्मन वाला लिखना है जिसके अंदर द विमेन वर ओनली द ऑनलुकर्स. द रोल ऑफ विमेन इन नेशनलिस्ट स्ट्रगल. देन व्हाट स्टेप्स डिड द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशनरी टेक टू क्रिएट. ये क्वेश्चन डिफरेंट वेज में आया हुआ है पेपर में. इट इज द सेम वन जो व्हाट मेजर्स दे हैड टेकन, अ सिंगल फ्लैग, then La Petre, the abolition of the words like Madame and Monsieur, citoyens, then common language, ये वो वाला है. Who were Marian and Germania? इसको उन्होंने क्वेश्चन को दिया है that the nations were personified as allegories. तो ये वही क्वेश्चन है. मैरियान आपका फ्रांस का, जर्मेनिया आपका जर्मन का and Germany का, and उसके main ideas. Briefly trace the process of German unification. This is one of the very common question in the schools. Then what changes did Napoleon introduce to make the administrative system? इसमें आपका question आता है, write a short note on Napoleonic Code 1804. Write a short note on Napoleonic Code 1804, यानी कि यूनिफॉर्म सिस्टम्स. उसने जो है मेजरमेंट का करेंसी का यूनिफॉर्म सिस्टम किया था, फ्यूडल चार्जेस को अबॉलिश किया था, ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड कम्युनिकेशन को इम्प्रूव किया था. वो सारा इसमें आ जाएगा. Then in the long question, what is meant by 1848 revolution? What were political, social and economic ideas? Politically, They wanted a single nation. Socially, they wanted a separate identity. Economically, they wanted better opportunities for trade. जैसा आपका Zolverin बना था. Choose 3 examples to show the contribution of culture. इसमें वो कैरोल कैम्पन्स्की है वो वाला आएगा जो अलग अलग कंसर्ट्स बने थे. देन आपका फॉक्स जो उसका नाम क्या दास फॉक्स. थ्रू अ फोकस ऑन एनी 2 nations explain how nations develop over 19th century. कोई भी 2 नेशन का एग्जाम्पल देना है. How was the history of, this is again a repeated question in the papers, including your boards. Why is the case of Britain called as strange? तो इसके अंदर आपको जो है ब्रिटेन का बताना है कि ब्रिटेन वॉज पावरफुल. इट कंसिस्टेड ऑफ, उस वक्त में जो इंग्लिश था दैट कंसिस्टेड ऑफ वेश, देन आइल्स एंड आपका स्कॉटलैंड स्कॉटिश. But British Parliament was more powerful. They did not allow the Scottish to speak their Gaelic language or wear their traditional dress. And 1707 जो था, that was a agreement through which Scotland West and जो था that was confiscated with Britain. And जो आयरलैंड है वो 100 साल बाद में it had become. आयरलैंड के अंदर आपके 2 तरीके के लोग रहते थे, द रोमन कैथोलिक्स एंड द प्रोटेस्टेंट्स. बट विद द हेल्प ऑफ द प्रोटेस्टेंट्स द ब्रिटिश वर एबल टू कंट्रोल ओवर. व्हाई डिड nationalist tensions emerge in the Balkans? What events led to the First World War? दोनों क्वेश्चंस का एक ही आंसर है, दैट इज नेशनलिस्ट टेंशन आपका था बाल्कन्स में. बाल्कन्स में अलग अलग तरीके के लोग रहते थे एंड अलग अलग तरीके के they had their culture and most of them were under the Ottoman Empire. All of them wanted they all wanted their separate independence, and in this independence fight they used to fight among each other. वो लोग एक दूसरे से ही लड़ते झगड़ते थे and they were enemies, they were jealous of each other. और इसका फायदा उठाया था जो आपके बड़े बड़े जो आपके पावर्स थे, पावरफुल जो नेशंस थे, जर्मनी, ऑस्ट्रिया, इन सब ने. एंड अल्टीमेटली दिस लेड टू द वर्ल्ड वॉर 1. So this is all the chapter, the rise of nationalism in Europe.